Hello, I'm Ahni Bonner, and welcome to Somatic Expeditions, a summit of opportunities to journey through the body into expanded awareness, connect with what's alive, and create new possibilities. In this session, I'm speaking with performance artist, scholar, teacher, and writer Hia Sauma about dancing and living somatically. Hia received her PhD from Columbia University and is a dancer, writer, educator, and movement artist. She has taught at Columbia University, New York University, the University of Tennessee, and the Paris College of Art, and other places. She writes about somatics, health, creativity, and somatic choreography in international dance and alternative therapy journals. She's currently finishing a book on the creative process of the choreographer Jerome Robbins. Hia is a certified instructor of Nia dance, body logos, and journey dance, and teaches classes and workshops in sensory-based dance modalities, creative movement, expressive arts, meditative strength training, and somatic awareness. Originally from Estonia, he has studied and lived in the United States for over a decade and is currently based in Paris, where she is teaching dance and movement courses both in person and online. Hia, welcome to Somatic Expeditions.
Welcome. And thank you so much for inviting me here, Ani, and I'm full of joy to join this program.
Thank you. You have such a rich and deep understanding of the history and practice of somatics. What are you able to tell us about your journey into the study, practice, and performance of somatic arts and movement?
Thank you for this question. Movement and the arts were actually a part of my life for a long time before I found somatics. But my journey into somatics started when I was working on my graduate degree in New York, and I was experiencing a burnout from my academic studies. And also, I started having health issues. So, for example, I developed Achilles tendonitis on both of my feet, and every step was painful for a year and a half. And I used to teach a lot of aerobic exercise classes, and I was certified in Pilates, so I had a movement background as well. But during this time of burnout and crisis of sorts, I really realized that I needed to find practices that are more gentle on the body and also more soulful, and practices that would help me find myself again and connect me to my work and my life in new ways. And I remember there was a colleague of mine who I went to this gym with on the Upper West Side in New York, and she said, "Well, Hia, why don't you go and try out some Nia classes? They taught those at the gym." And so I did. And I remember my very first experience with the Nia classes. So Nia is a dance movement practice. I remember two things. I remember how the people around me were smiling. And that is something that you see very rarely in gym classes. And the second thing I remember from that class was that I felt like I had an hour of beautiful movements. In other words, the movements that we did during that class made me feel um, beautiful. I loved the way in which we moved in that class. And so that was the beginning point of my journey through somatics. I started to learn these movement practices. I started to read everything I could about somatics. And actually, at that point, which was late in my career in graduate school, I also changed my dissertation topic. So I brought this kind of somatic and movement interest into my academic life as well. And gradually over time, these two sides of me, the academic researcher, somebody who loves to think and analyze, and the mover, the dancer, started to blend more and more.
Hmm.
And actually, a lot of people find somatic practices through their health crisis. Yeah, so when they experience injuries. So it was partly true for me also.
So you also do this as dance performance. What is somatic dance?
Somatic dance as a dance practice or as a part of like a choreography and then performance. I can speak about both, but maybe I'll start by saying a few words about somatic dance. So somatics is, as I'm sure the listeners of this program know by now, somatics is an umbrella term for a range of different movement practices. They have different histories and also um, pedagogical approaches of these different somatic practices differ. But what they all share is this principle that we as practitioners come to movement first of all by sensing what it feels like to move. Yeah, so instead of focusing on the shapes and the performance of particular movements, we we try to sense physically what happens inside of us as we move, and how does movement impact our emotions and imagination and the mind, for example. So some of the older somatic practices, or the forerunners of some of the current somatic practices, have focused more on physical awareness in very slow movements, and for example, with the participants on the mat. So what somatic dance practices do is they take these somatic principles of inner awareness and focus on physical sensations non-judgmentally. They take these principles into dance experience. Yeah. So in somatic dance classes, we might actually be moving quite vigorously, and we might cover the space and even interact with other people and big groups, small groups. But the focus always stays on what is happening inside. How do I feel? Yeah. So somatic dance typically gives the practitioners the freedom to explore their own movements and to be free and curious about what they want to express with their bodies, or how the bodies feel at a particular moment. And as a performer, as a choreographer, I also rely on sensations as my starting point. Yeah. So when I create dances, I also create them from the inside out. Yeah. And I also think about maybe how to bring this kind of kinesthetic awareness to the experience of the audience members as well, because sometimes the term for that is kinesthetic empathy. We feel what the performer does through our, by looking, by watching the person. Yeah. So sometimes slow movements and small movements can be very, very impactful actually for the audience members as well.
Mm. And can you say a little bit about the work you've been doing during the pandemic around Paris?
Yes, this is a great question also. So one of the interesting projects that I participated in during the pandemic was actually really, really interesting as a time period for somatic arts, because this is a side point, but uh, I really felt how some somatic dance and somatic movement practices helped a lot of people that were experiencing difficult psychological and physical times during the pandemic. But the project that was sort of innovative was something I did in collaboration with the Columbia University's global centers in Paris and the undergraduate program in Paris. So usually in that program, the students come to Paris to study here for a semester or for a year or so. And so during the pandemic, the American students from New York, they couldn't come. And so the program coordinator approached me and said, well, here, could we come up with something that involves dance? And we came up with the idea of blending Paris and dance together. So with the videographer, I went to some different places in Paris, and we introduced these sites to the audience members through movement. In other words, I told a little story about these places, and then I animated the objects or the spaces, the parks through movement. You know, so it was a way to bring audience members who weren't physically able to participate into the city of Paris. And then I also taught some dance classes in in for that program.
Mm. I've watched them and they're so delightful. What a great introduction to Paris. So intimate on the ground, and you're there and people are walking around, and it really is such a fun idea.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thank you.
you've tapped into the body's knowledge in response to many things, including art. You've danced in response to art, and even Jerome Robbins archives. You've really taken this to stretched it into spaces that people don't normally go, I think. Can you speak
Yeah,
to
yeah.
what kind of knowledge emerges from the body and what you have found in applying somatics to such spaces?
That's also a very evocative question. Mm, so yes, so I brought somatics to my academic study also, particularly with the Jerome Robbins project. So I was working in his archives in New York at the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts, and Jerome Robbins's archives are very, very vast. So, for example, in one collection only, there are 600 big archival boxes, and there's another collection and another collection. So, for somebody who has a limited amount of time, to go through all of these boxes is really a big task. So, somatics helped me in a few different ways when I was doing this work. So, first of all, I remember I went to the archival rooms, and I focused on my inhales and exhales, and I really, through my somatic knowledge, I brought myself into that space. So I was able to pay very close attention what was in front of me. Like my mind was not wandering, and I was able to boof, stay with the material and be fully, fully present. Yeah. So that was one way in which I was applying my somatics to the academic work. And then the other way in which it helped me was that when I was going through all these folders and boxes of materials, I paid attention to my physical sensations in response to these materials. So, for example, I remember there was one particular letter in which Robbins describes sort of like a moment of angelic visitations. In other words, he is in Spoleto, Italy. He's having his morning cup of coffee, and he's just looking at people around him, and then he notices like the spirit of somebody, like a friend of his and a fellow dancer who had actually died. And I remember the way in which he describes that particular scene. It created like physical sensations in my chest, and that was the moment where I felt like, the reason I'm interested in Jerome Robbins's work, or the reason I want to write about him, is that his archives, his writings really touch me. They're emotionally very, very powerful. So that kind of connection, soulful, physical, emotional connection, helps a writer stay with the project even when the project gets difficult, because writing something long takes a lot of effort and a lot of willpower. So nourishing yourself with that connection can give you force. And also it helped me make decisions as to what I include in my work. My physical sensations, actually also like my intuition, they guided me amongst all of these materials. The other project that you're referring to was actually also an interesting project. um, I was asked to to come to a gallery, and this was also during the pandemic, to show people who are not able to come to the gallery. Actually, the gallery closed like the next day, to show people what the exhibition was like. Yeah, it was like an exhibition of photography. So again, as a collaboration with the videographer, I I I responded to the artworks through movement. I asked myself, well, what would it be like to walk around or take the space in and take in these visual works, and instead of looking at them only, to also embody them? Yeah. So that was this kind of embodied knowledge in response to artwork was the basis for that project. Yeah.
Mm.
So this is what I try to teach in my classes also, like how to take something that is a physical practice that we learn in classes, how to take that to other spaces, how to feel how this embodied knowledge really can help us in so many different realms. It's not really separate from the studio space. It comes from the studio space in how you live your relationships, how you do your work, how you experience the day, how you go and I don't know, listen to a concert, things like this.
Yeah, it really speaks to how the world is alive around you. Like in those archives,
Yeah.
that the materials are alive. It's such a different
Yeah.
experience than the
Yes.
digitalized form. It's
Yes, I do
bringing out.
absolutely agree with this. I think that, teaching somatics and learning somatics and dancing and moving is it's like we're in the aliveness business. It's like we wake up the body, we wake up the sensations, we wake up our intuition. And as a result of that, the world, whatever you touch, whoever you encounter, it becomes like a richer and more vibrant and more inspiring place to be. Yeah. And then your mood is more also active and joyful, and life is fuller, life is more satisfying, I think.
Hmm. Do you have any stories about how your students or how you've witnessed the transformative power of dance or somatic movement with your students?
Mhm. Yes, I have seen how, dance is really a healing and transformative power. Like I saw this in my own story, like dance really transformed how I lived, and then what I studied and what I do in my life. But I also see this in my students. Actually, I also see myself as somebody who helps students tap into the power of dance. Yeah, I'm kind of like a channel. I bring dance. I help them sort of connect to this transformative power. So, for example, one of the recent cases of this is a student of mine who, before he started coming to my dance classes, he's a former veteran in his 30s. He had a hard time sort of expressing his emotions and his vulnerabilities. But now he has completely transformed. He's much more confident. He is much more expressive. He's much more in touch with his emotional side also, and he doesn't feel like he needs to repress those. Yeah, and so I feel like he has also become much more creative in the work that he does outside of the dance practice. I've also seen how people who used to be, well, at the beginning of my work with them, when I listen to them, I hear how they're very judgmental of their own bodies. For example, my arms are like this and this, or oh, I don't like my glutes, or I don't like this area of my body. And one of the real benefits of this kind of somatic work, I think, is that this work gives people access to more compassion toward their own selves. Yeah, so I have seen how people's language around their own body has like changes. So they start to connect to their own composition, the muscles and the bones and all the different layers of the body with more gratitude and more freedom, more authenticity, and less judgment and less criticism and less of a sense of comparison. Yeah, I think they find a more satisfying and pleasurable way to be in their bodies. Yeah, and then also other kinds of things like pleasure and joy and healthful ways of living in the world come into their lives also. And so
Wow.
this,
I mean, that just sounds like a completely transformative way of living.
I think so.
Um, so, movement, somatic movement, strength training, meditation, meditative strength training. You teach so many different classes. Can you tell us more about the range of things you do and what is that?
Yes, so the base of everything that I teach is this kind of let's track sensations. Let's turn the focus inside. Let's activate the inner eye. Yeah, let's look at the body from the inside out in this kind of non-judgmental way. So in dance classes, we move. I use different kind of music. The practice that I teach most often is called the Nia dance, and it's a beautiful blend of easy to follow choreography, oftentimes also repetitive. There's a reason also as to why the movements are repetitive. So, for example, one reason is we can relax the nervous system as we move. Another reason they're repetitive, the movements, is we can start to then maybe modify, introduce some little variations into the movement. It becomes more exploratory, it becomes creative. Yeah. So Nia is a blend of these kinds of repetitive, easy to follow movements, and then free dance, where people can explore whatever movement or music brings to them at the moment. Yeah. The strength training and stretching classes that I teach are about alignment and really listening to the different parts of the body, to the muscles and the bones, and using the imagination to visualize and sense and see, for example, your anatomy. Yeah, so um, slow. I usually don't use music in those classes. um, it's a way to work with the muscles and the bones that is more holistic. Yes, instead of feeling like I need to do like 30 repetitions of this, but my mind is elsewhere. We use the mind to focus on what is going on in the body with curiosity. And then I also teach expressive art. Sometimes I work with visual artists, for example, and we do collaborations between sort of free form expressions in like with painting and drawing, and then I add the movement part. And this work is based in my interest in the Tamalpa life art process, which was developed by the visionary performer, author, dancer Anna Halprin and her daughter Daria Halprin, and is really a beautiful mix of writing, movement, performance, and visual art. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I'm really impressed by how you take the somatic language into all of these experiences. You've described in your writing a commitment to live each day in body awareness. How do you practice this, and how has it impacted you?
This is also a great question. I hope you ask this of all the presenters, because it would be interesting to see how people actually live their practices and what they do. So, so a big part of my daily life is actually teaching these classes. Yes, and so for me, teaching the movement classes is a way to tune in, is a way to be spontaneous, improvisational, and almost like channeling some knowledge that comes from, yes, from inside of me, but also somehow from other sources, I feel. So I do that, but then every day I also do something that is really meant for me only. Yes, a time that I use to connect deeply to my own self. And what I use for that period, that time of my day varies. You know, for example, this morning I had very little time. I had like 10 minutes, so I danced around in my space. You know, I wanted to create movement and energy before I had my first appointment. Some days I do like a stretching or strengthening sequence, but I always use it to tune in, to see what's going on, to center myself, to find my home inside the body. Some days I do Kundalini, like a Kundalini yoga practice. Yeah, there are two people whose DVDs I just love. They've been an accompaniment to my life for a long period of time. Uh, Anna Brett and Ravi Singh. I love their DVDs. Yeah, sometimes I use that, but one doesn't even have to have like a morning routine to connect to one's body somatically. You can also walk to the subway or be on the subway and have like do a little somatic attunement, by which I mean you inhale, exhale, you feel what's happening inside the body. You can, for example, direct the mind's eye to sensing, to seeing those parts of the body that you want to bring some awareness into. Yeah. So when I was living in New York, on my way in the morning, I woke up 6 o'clock, first client 7:30. So on my way to my first client, I was like preparing myself for the day and for the class by I walk by moving my awareness inside the body. Yeah. So outwardly, I wasn't doing anything that was different from regular walking, but inside of me, I was like, oh, how do I feel? How does it feel like to be me in the the pelvic region, in the belly? Oh, what is happening in my shoulder blades? Can I feel my neck and throat today in some particular way? Yeah, so we have the ability to move the mind's eye or to direct awareness into different parts of the body. And you will discover very quickly that every day is different because your sensations are different. You can do the same movements, for example, strength training movements, the bicep curls, but each day they are different because your sensations are different, because the body somehow has a particular amount of energy or feels tired. It's different. It's somatics is also a way to develop curiosity about mm, the particular you in that particular time of your life every day. So there's never like, oh, this day is the same as the other day. It really, somatics really helps you stay awake to the life that is yours to live at this particular moment, and you stay awake by connecting to the body, by using this as your greatest teacher.
Mm. It's amazing how just attending a class and going, it really transfers out into living daily life as well. And you write a lot about that. And that's, I think, what you're talking about right here.
Yes.
Hmm. So you're also a writer, not only a dancer movement artist, but also a writer who also writes about somatic writing or somatic language.
Mhm.
Is there a connection between your writing and dance movement that you can speak to?
Yes, my yes. So oftentimes I tell myself that the best thing to do in life is to dance. The second best is to write about dance, and the third best is to is to read about dance. So I like all these activities. Yeah, for me, attending a dance class or teaching a dance class is a preparation or an inspiration oftentimes for my writing also. Like I get ideas for my writing. I want to continue thinking about dance and movement outside of the class also, and dancing movement gives me ideas for that. Also my students stories, their experiences give me ideas for that. And um, dancing is an inter or movement is an integral part of my creative process as well. So typically before I start writing is so hard. It's hard to stay in one place and focus and do something that is cognitively difficult. So when I move, I prepare my body for actually the time that I need to spend in relative stillness. So that's the first thing. When I move, I set myself into this kind of free flow state. And that somehow translates into my writing also. My hand and my thoughts feel more free because my body feels more free. Um, how else does movement help my writing? I feel like movement, especially somatic movement, it is actually uh, one needs to be a little bold to do somatic movement. Why do somatic dance? Why do I say this? Because movement practices that involve improvisation or free dance, moving your own way, uh, presuppose that you are willing to do that. Yes, and then sometimes we might feel kind of exposed dancing in ways that feel naturally ours. In other words, there's nobody who gives you precise steps. You find your own steps. Yes. And I feel like finding your own steps or your own ways of dancing gives you a stronger voice as a mover. And that kind of strength of voice, this kind of like, I am here to do my own thing, or I have something to give as a mover, also then translates it into writing. You feel that your writing voice also is strengthened by the fact that in another realm of your life, the voice is being constantly nourished and developed also. And I feel like there's like the creativity that one taps into when one dances also moves into writing. And maybe the last point that I want to mention is that movement, dance, it puts me in a good mood. It lifts my spirits, and that is essential because writing, as I said earlier, is not necessarily easy. So if you come to it with this kind of, I feel good, I feel joyous, I feel confident, then the tasks that are cognitively difficult feel a little bit easier. Your inner critic is a little softer or has moved to the side. You're able to create because you allow yourself to create from this the space of joyfulness and pleasure.
Mm. And you talked before about also how you, when you're tapping into the body, it's almost like the words come from someplace else or beyond the
Yes.
self. I have that experience in teaching yoga. It's like when you're down in there, it's like things emerge out. It's
Yes, it's a very interesting phenomenon. If people have reading recommendations about this, I'd be curious to hear, because it really does sometimes feel like the words that come or the images that come, they feel like they come from somewhere else. It feels like they are being given to us, to me, to other teachers, and then we kind of give these to other people also, or we create a space where other people can find their own words and their own images as well.
mm,
It's really, it can be a really powerful experience, this kind
yeah.
of.
It's evocative of the mythic muse kind of concept that it's out there that comes to people and passes through. It feels like that maybe is some basis for that. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would really like to share with the audience?
Let me see. Is there anything that I wanted to say that you haven't asked me? Nothing comes to mind at the moment. If I have something I can add, maybe at the very end.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe this is something I would like to add. I would like to add that somatic movement practices are really meant for people from all kinds of different ages. There's no age limit. For example, the dance classes, and I can name also some of the dance classes that are somatically inclined. So there's Nia dance, there's Journey dance, there's Shake Your Soul, Surya Soul, Biodanza, Five Rhythms, Gaga dance, many, 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 many others. So anybody doesn't, you don't have to have like a dance background. You don't have to be like musically, like have a strong sense of rhythm. All these kinds of things, disappear. It's really about feeling well as you move. And people from different backgrounds can easily enter those spaces. And the idea of performance and judgment is really taken away from those classes. And it might not, for people who are in the somatic world, maybe they don't realize this, but the somatic classes are very different from regular dance classes. Traditional dance classes are much more about performing certain, learning how to perform, how to execute certain precise dance steps. It's about mimicking the teacher. It's about the outer four. And somatics is a completely different shade to, or has a completely different philosophy underneath, which is, the outer form, the shape, the performance, the precision of movements is not so important. How you feel when you move is important. How you feel, what is it that you feel when you lift your arm and move your shoulder blades? How does it feel uh, to dance or to move when we have, for example, injuries or experiences with anxiety or depression or chronic pain? These things enter into the dance realm.
Mm. Really speaks to that compassion for just listening to the body and
Yeah.
moving with the sensations that emerge out of inhabiting the body. It's interesting how we can shut that off.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. It's a really connection. It's about building connection with yourself, and with compassion and gratitude and the sense of lightness and curiosity, and maintaining that, having that be a companion, having that practice be a companion to your life. And I really saw the big impact of these kinds of movement classes during the pandemic, when people came to me, and I felt that the resources for joy were limited, and immediately you come to dance, they feel better after dance. It's like their mood is immediately lighter. So I feel like the somatic dance classes, movement classes, also constantly fill up these resources for joy. So I, for example, and anybody who does these practices these dance arts, we don't need to wait for a party to dance and have a good time. Like, we can do this on a weekly, daily basis and have a good time. And then, as a result of having a good time, we do other things in our life better.
Mm-hmm. So I understand you have a practice that to share with the audience.
Yes, I was thinking maybe we can dance a little bit. Um, a few songs, like 4 or 5 songs, and this is sort of like a mix of a free dance and then some elements from Nia dance. So um, and maybe during the songs or between the songs, I'll speak a little bit also. And as you step into your dance space, really treat this as, I recommend that you treat this time as your time, and you can watch me, you can follow the choreography, you can take inspiration from me, or maybe you don't. Yes, maybe you stay in the rhythm, like maybe the second song I'll do is quite rhythmic and has a pattern. Maybe you stay with it, maybe you don't. It doesn't really matter so much. It's really a free uh, experience.
Sounds
Yeah.
great.
So we can get started. Yes.
Yes, let's
I'll
do it.
take off some layers, some jewelry, and then I'll put some music on. I'll take the computer to a different space in my room.
Okay, we're going along with you.
Yes, I'll put some lights on. I wrote one of my articles that I wrote during the pandemic was actually how we use our home spaces for movement, the challenges and the joys of that experience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So as I set up my space, maybe you guys also need to set up your space somehow. Maybe you need to adjust. So feel free to adjust the furniture. And notice that for movement, you don't really need a lot of space. It's not like we have to have luxurious households. Yeah, we can also use, for example, the space vertically up and down more than horizontally. Let me move some other things out of the way. There's a Parisian apartment, very small. Yeah, maybe I'll put some more light on. And as I adjust my space, maybe if you feel so inclined, you can stand up, you can inhale, exhale. And as you move about and inhale, exhale, maybe the first thing we do is just see the space around you. Yeah, this is kind of like your sacred dance space for the next 20 minutes or so. How do you feel in this particular space? In your home, or maybe it's your work setting? I've noticed maybe where the light is coming through into the space. Yeah. And then you can keep the eyes open, or you can close them and stay in one place. And let's turn the focus inward. How does the body feel? What does it feel like to be you at this moment in your physical sensations? Do you notice some tension somewhere, or do you feel particularly expansive somewhere in the body? And then in your own free time, in your own, like, find your own timing. There's no particular rhythm here that you need to follow. Just find some movement that just like you feel the body wants to do. Yes, non-judgmentally, without a particular sense of outcome in your mind. For example, maybe you want to move your shoulder blade, maybe you want to move the arm, maybe you want to move the spine. Let the movement unfold organically. Yes, I'm staying here close to the computer because in a minute I'm going to put the music on also. And as I put the music on, you can just keep doing whatever you're doing. You can have the music be a background that you don't need to follow. Yes. Yeah, maybe you want to let the body come a little bit closer to the ground and feel the vertebrae in the spine. How does the neck feel today? Where else does the body want to have a little stretch? Yeah, and as I put the music on, keep doing what you're doing, like I said, then at some point I'll offer some choreography. Feel free to follow that or keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. There you go. Very nice. Exactly. This next one. Work. This is a magical sword dance, yeah? So you can imagine that you're holding your sword in the hand. What kind of magical deeds can you do in your life? Yes. What can it give you power to do? Or what can it cut in a mindful, compassionate way? Yeah. Very nice. And now this one. Playful. And take a few steps around in the space again. And then as you inhale, exhale, what do you sense in the body? What are the sensations that seem to be alive? Where do you feel what? Yeah, so sensations can be, I feel heat here. I feel the sweat on my skin. I feel looseness in my rib cage. Yeah, so find a few of these because that is the vocabulary for knowing the body, knowing the paying attention to sensations. Yeah, so even if they feel small or insignificant, that's really the base for us knowing what the body is trying to tell us or how we feel. Okay, and then an inhale, exhale, maybe hands touch someplace on the body, and then a big thank you and a big bow to you for being here and for dancing.
Thank you so much, Hia. I just appreciate the vitality of your creativity. So much passion and depth to your knowledge and to your lifeness, your life force. It's truly exceptional and inspiring.
Thank you.
I understand you have a free gift for the audience as well, which they can access by clicking the link next to this video. Can you tell us about it?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So my gift to you is a free dance class. So here in Paris, in my studio online, I will send you the information. And so it's an hour of this kind of movement where we mix between some choreography and free dance, a Nia dance practice, or an hour of somatic strength training and stretching where there's no music and we stay on the mat. We use therabands and we use the inner eye to sense what's happening. It's a great way to get to know the body. So one of those, and a consultation like 15-20 minutes where we can speak on WhatsApp or online on Zoom about your movement practices, how to make them more somatic, or how to bring your current somatic practice into some other realm of your life.
Very generous. Thank you again for your time. And you can access Hia's gift again by simply clicking on the link next to this video. Thank you all for joining us on this somatic expedition. I hope you're inspired to follow Hia's performances, join her movement classes, join her dancing on the streets of Paris, and connect to your own aliveness through her amazingly prolific and creative work and through your own being in touch with your own body. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.